Hello and welcome to episode 276 of the Thursday Night Podcast. My name is Brady, joined as always by David, and all you loyal listeners. If you're still here on this one, you're the realest ones. You're our strongest soldiers. We got everything to talk about. Basketball's back, football's still going on, but as you will probably know, listening to this episode, things aren't going great in Panthersville. We'll break down probably the worst season opener that Georgia State men's basketball has had since we've been covering Georgia State, since we've been around Georgia State, even as students.
Probably.
I'd have to go back and check. I didn't mean to spring that on us as a topic that I didn't prepare for, but I can't imagine there's one where the vibes were worse exiting game one. But we'll go through it. We'll go through the women's, who also played, and they won their game, and they won their game comfortably, which is a sea change for the way the season's gone for Georgia State athletics. And then it feels like forever since Georgia State's played on the football field. It's because it's been since a couple Thursdays ago. They're back in action this Saturday after their bye. They'll play at Coastal Carolina. We will also get into that and just kind of what's going to happen now that the bowl game's not to play for, and what does this team look like heading into the final 4 weeks of the season, and how do they approach it. We were going to start with basketball, I think, no matter what, just because it was going to be a game that happened more recently, but think it took a different turn than maybe we were expecting. I think it was kind of a let's find something out about these teams type situation. Even for Eastern Michigan fans, I'm sure had a lot of other. They finished 500 last year, so I'm sure they're entering thinking, all right, what are we going to learn about the Eagles? Georgia State fans thinking, what are we going to learn about the Panthers? Concerning game to say the least for Georgia State as they lose 71-49 on the road on Monday evening. It was a tight game to start the first half. No one could really make baskets. Eastern Michigan starts to get a little bit of distance. They end up with a 9-point lead at halftime. It stays around there for most of the second half and then kind of drives off a cliff there at the end. I believe it was a 16-4 run for EMU to end the game. As the turnovers started piling up for Georgia State, they end up 17 of them on the night. They shoot 29% as a team. They actually shot better from three than they did from two, which is a near impossibility. Sorry, it was a 16-2 run over the final 6 minutes. So kind of one of those classic cold stretches we've seen from this team, I think, far too often. Pulling up the stats now since we're talking about this game, might as well. Let everyone see the gory details. And so Georgia State down by as much as 22, which was what the final score was. Down by, I think, as much as 15 at some point in the first half, the early second half. Never fully out of it until the end, and then it kind of just got ugly. Couldn't make baskets to really save themselves in this one. As I mentioned, 29% shooting from the floor, 30.4 from three. Got out-rebounded 53-38. That being with 22 offensive rebounds for Eastern Michigan. Did not have Clash Peters or Ja'Kai Newton. Don't believe either made the trip. We were talking about Clash missed the Morehouse exhibition away for personal reasons. Still don't have any more clarity on that, but he wasn't there. And Newton is your best defender, so you think probably that offers you a little bit more on that side if he's playing, and maybe he'd still been under a minutes restriction if he had played, but those are certainly facts about this game that could have made it go a different direction. But here's the truth of it. They didn't lose by 22 because it was game one and they're figuring stuff out. They didn't lose by 22 because they didn't have two of their rotation guys. They lost by 22 because they weren't ready. They weren't prepared to play this game. They didn't take the time from when they were playing Georgia close in an exhibition in October to this time at the start of the season to really hone in on what they wanted to be. And unfortunately, that's something we've said about the last three Georgia State teams. And so I don't want to be the Debbie Downer of all Debbie Downers, but I don't know what you look at for the rest of the season. There's 30 games more to go that they're like regulated, they have to play. And I don't know what sunshine you can find in any of it right now, just because it looks like a less talented team than there's been in years past. But I think the idea was this was going to be a more cohesive team. And the guys you're bringing from lower levels who weren't, you had to kind of squint to see what maybe they're going to bring to this roster. You haven't seen like them, the defense collectively you didn't see steps from Jelani Hamilton or Malachi Brown. Jelani with a quiet 13, only 8 shot attempts, 4 turnovers, and then Malachi Brown, a very loud 1 for 10, double the amount of turnovers as points, 4 turnovers, 2 points. Those are the guys you're really leaning on to be like the stars of this team offensively, and you didn't get a lot from them. And so kind of where it is, and if you're losing this one by 22, there's a lot more games on this schedule you can lose by 22 or worse. And so even as we kind of knew what the season was going in, make or break for Jonas Hayes, it feels like a disappointment somehow. And it feels like the earliest I've been just kind of out on this team. And I don't know what it'd take to get me back. And the other thing is, like, I think that's where a lot of fans were, where it's like you needed to see real strides this season. And this is far from strides. At least earlier, they beat Ball State to open last season. You saw wins, you saw something in the early parts of the season. This was just a mess. Obviously, I had nothing to say about this game, as I just rattled off for a lot longer than I intended to speak initially.
No, I mean, I don't know that I've ever been around any sort of team, just professional or college, where you could, like, make any sort of comments about coaching after the first game. But if you're going on the road to Eastern Michigan, no disrespect to them, genuinely, if you're going on the road to Eastern Michigan and you look like that, what's going to happen 2 days after we record this when they go to Cincinnati? What's going to happen later this month when they go to Arizona State? What's going to happen when they get into Sun Belt play? I mean, there is no scenario where the way that they played versus Eastern Michigan is going to lead them to win a single basketball game this year. Like, just point blank, period. I'm sorry. Like, that is how that game went. And what sucks about it is it started off okay. They kind of traded misses with Eastern Michigan, but it wasn't like Eastern Michigan really could get to their spots. And then there was I guess the under 8 media or something in the first half. And from there, just the entire dam burst, because I mean, Eastern Michigan could do anything that they wanted on the offensive end. It didn't really look like Georgia State had any sort of cohesion on their offensive end. The rebounding was just, I mean, it was a joke. Like, it's like Georgia State has never seen a rebound before. And I guess we're going to need, Torian Prince to come be an assistant coach or something to teach Georgia State how to rebound, because genuinely it was that bad. I think the concerning part about all of this is how many mid-February losses have we seen like this against Sunbelt opponents, exactly like this, where, Georgia State will start slow, maybe cut it to a relatively close margin just before the half, and then in the second half, lay a goose egg. That's kind of what happened here again. They didn't have the before halftime run, really.
Unless it was one of the games where they laid a goose egg in the first half and had to come back and kind of looked better in the second half, but it's like, okay, you dig yourself too big of a hole, and we've got all sorts of flavors as long as it's one of those two flavors for the most part.
Right, exactly. I mean, I don't even say this to be harsh, but like, do you even have a performance that you can pull out of this and be like, oh yeah, I'm excited to see that again? Because I think Jelani's 13, didn't he have like a 8-0 run or something by himself in the first half?
Isaiah Sherrard had a 7-0 run in about a 2-minute stretch in the second half. It's what cut it to as close as it got in the second half. And you could bottle that up. He had both of the threes he hit in that moment. It was a nice run. It was like, okay, one of them was on like a nice set play where it was off of a screen. He got an open three, drained it. The issue there is he didn't score in the other 24 minutes he played, but like that was at least a little from one of the new people you brought in. You look at the like Joey Chappelle 6 and 7, like Anthony Eno 5 and 8, like Christian Beam 4 and 5, like all those. Maybe you'd want the rebounds to be a little more, and certainly they gave up a lot of those on the defensive end. But like if you collectively put the bigs together, you got at least partially what you were hoping for with that group, and Sherrard with little pockets. But it's like I said, like you need, Jelani was picked second team All Sun Belt. Malachi wasn't, but I think if we were going to pick a second most likely person to get Sun Belt honors at the end of the year, he would have been it. And you bring him back. you make an effort to bring him back because you think he can be the guy you can build around as far as running your offense. And he has a game like that. Like you're not going to win. Like this team is not going to win if those two are not playing good games, let alone average games, let alone kind of what we saw. So a lot is put on their shoulders, fairly or unfairly, kind of the way the team was built. I put out on my article, I did an I think I feel I know the day of the game, preseason, just kind of final check-in on basketball. And I singled out that the defense I thought would be better, which not looking super, although kind of with the split you give up. You give up 43, 27, 55 shooting splits. You really shouldn't lose that game by 22, but that point aside, I talked a lot about Jelani and Malachi being kind of like who you're leaning on offensively. And part of it just because you didn't go out and you didn't really replace Tenari Lane in an obvious way in three-point shooting. Sherrod's going to offer some. I think Berthay's going to offer some. But, like, you didn't go out and get really obvious scorers. And this team still struggles with not having a lot of shot creation and not having a lot of help from the coaching staff of drawing up plays to get favorable shots. Like, there's so much iso ball in this offense and guys that shouldn't be doing the iso ball. Like, Ayuba Berthay made a three, plays tough on defense. You certainly like things. He had 2 assists, which was second most on the team. There was one point where he was doing like a ISO at the top of the key and ended up taking an awkward like turnaround jumper from the free throw line that was like, basically not even close. It's not his game. Why is the offense in like pivotal spots in the game designed around someone who is not a shot creator just kind of being left on their own at the top of the key to make their own shot? Like, he's a catch and shoot guy. A 3-and-D that you brought in to hopefully help you in that aspect. And you saw some of that in this game, but it's like, I don't put it on him so much as he shouldn't be in that position where like that's what the offense gets to. But we've seen it so often with this team where possession will kind of go nowhere. There'll be a lot of stagnant sets, and then whoever has the ball when the clock ticks under 10 seconds is kind of just in charge to make something happen. And surprised it's not that efficient of an offense. But I rambled there a little bit. The point of what I was saying is like, if you're going to have Malachi and Jelani combined for 15 points, and that being on, 4 of 18 shooting, 2 of 10 from 3, Georgia State's going to lose every single one of the games that's set up like that. And so, aside from everything else, it's like you've got to find a way to get your best guys comfortable in what they need to do. And in game 1, there didn't seem to be any kind of plan to get anyone in their comfortable spots. Chief among them, your top 2 guys. And so part of it's like you need them to just kind of meet the moment and just kind of recognize like we've got to run this stuff, but you've also got to help them out. And I think that is the biggest offense here, that just kind of like who was put in a favorable position in this game. It didn't feel like there was any sort of game plan to take advantage of any particular edge. And, going through the roster, there's certainly things you can look at that guys do well. I don't think it's just like, oh, there's nothing to be gained there. But whatever minute detail that you can do better than the other team, you've got to hammer. And we're through 3 years in one game, and we haven't really seen much of that happening with this staff. And moving a coach along and bringing in 2 guys certainly hasn't changed much. It looks like a lot the same team that Jonas Hayes has coached the last 3 seasons.
And the sad part is there isn't even a point to belabor here. I hope that they can flush this one down the drain, and obviously this week is going to be a tough matchup, sure, but you got to flush this one down the drain and just try to get something going heading into this next game, because all around it was just a terrible game. And I don't even think Eastern Michigan played all that well. Like, yes, obviously they put up 71 points. Certainly did not shoot.
If that's
the
season average, right now you would take the average given up being 71 in this. Especially the offense is not going to help you out. You got 17 turnovers a game. Like, they will give up more than 71 a lot of times if that trend continues.
Certainly will, because better teams are not going to shoot under 30% from 3, as Eastern Michigan did. So, and they didn't even take a lot. They really didn't. That was not where they were making their bread, and that is kind of emblematic of how bad this was for Georgia State. So.
Yeah, and then the other thing, I talked about Clash Peters not being there, and look, we've seen it with football. There's kind of the vagueness in the press conference as well about availability, and I reckon I don't want to know everything that's going on in these kids' lives. Like, there's any number of valid reasons, or invalid reasons, whatever it is, we don't need to know. But like it is another year where after a couple of players were just kind of conspicuously out without much notice last year and not really talked about last year, it's happening again, and I don't need to know what's going on. I hope everything's well with Clash. If Ja'Kai, if it's just like holding out injury wise, they're just being safe with him, whatever. Like we don't need to know that stuff. That is where media, people with podcasts, get in trouble, just kind of needling too much in personal lives and stuff. But you got to find a way to talk about it. Just be like, this is what's going on. And there's an example we can point to in our very state that Kennesaw State basketball had someone before this. They had their game on Monday as well. Their first game, they played a non-D1 and just smoked him. Player, I think Jamil Miller's his name, was not with the team. People noticed it before the game. They're talking about it. It was a bit of a surprise. The first thing I saw that Antoine Pedway did in his post game is he just addressed it. Said, family came to me. He needed to be away from the team for personal reasons, and that was the end of it. But it wasn't a question that had to be asked to him. He didn't speak on whatever's going on with him. Just kind of, this is what's going on. You guys recognized it, saw what's up, and just letting you know what's going on. And it's like, that isn't an unreasonable level to meet. And it just speaks again to, like, what program is it acceptable to just see, like, random, like, oh, this player's not here on the bench this game, and have nothing mentioned at all. And, like, I get it. There's not a super media presence. It's not like Jonas is doing scrums every day or every other days, and there's not pregame availability to ask these type of questions. But it speaks to just the level of lack of being on the ball with this stuff. Like, it's just kind of normal. It's like, if there's going to be things that come up from time to time, you've just got to find a way to feel like you're on top of it. And when it comes up, find a way to just talk about it without spilling the beans or whatever's going on, because we don't need that part of it. But it's just kind of a microcosm of just not being a tightly run ship. And again, hope everything's well with Clash and Ja'Kai. Obviously, I think the team needs especially Ja'Kai moving forward, so if it's just kind of a temporary thing, that'd probably be for the best. But, I mean, you mentioned their next game. This Friday they go to Cincinnati in what, per KenPom, is one of the bigger statistical just nightmare matchups Georgia State's ever been on the wrong side of in one of these things, where Cincinnati's entering this game through one game, so sample size, whatever, as the 6th best defense in efficiency in Division I. And Georgia State currently is at the 328th most efficient offense, which is bottom 50, not very good. And so this could look similar to kind of how those SEC games go. You play Presbyterian on Monday in your home opener, so that will also happen before the next time we record, and that's a winnable game. That's probably the most winnable non-D1 game left.
Can I say it? Can I say that a November 10th game is a must-win?
Yes. It's not even just must-win. It's like win by 20 and look like everything is hunky-dory again. Like,
right.
Because you were starting off this year, like, winning season was kind of the bar for a lot of fans. And I think even if they win this game by 21, they're not losing it by 21 or 22, whatever. Hypothetically, it could have been 21. Things aren't really that, like, people would have been happy about the win, but it's still been like, wake me up when this team is 5 games over 500 entering conference play. Like, the bar was not, like, squeak by, and it made it tough when they set this up to be a team with a lot of new faces and a lot of guys that are adjusting to Division I basketball for the first time. But it's like, that is ultimately the team that you picked in a season where you knew you had to have a winning season. So it's kind of like, I guess I don't want to make it such an emotional thing, but it's like, this being your performance in a year that everyone knew was like do or die, make or break for this, like this being what you look like in game 1, like that's a joke. Like, this is what you're putting out there as the product. As you know, this is a season you need to put out a winning product on the court. And this is what it was in game 1. Like, when fans were already kind of up against you, and I get that that's not necessarily on his, like, that's not what is guarding his decisions as far as, like, making the fans happy, but it's all kind of part and parcel. Like, everyone needs to be feeling good about this team for there to be a year 5, and I just don't see it right now. Presbyterian feels like a game, like, if we're here next week talking about a lost Presbyterian, then they might not win the Division I game this year. Just straight up. And at that point, it's just kind of like, if you were sitting there, like, 2 wins, and they're both against non-Division I teams entering the holidays. Why would you have this coach the entire season? Like, maybe a different voice can get anything out of this roster, but it's kind of like we're to that level, which we haven't been with Georgia State basketball ever since we've been watching the program. And Georgia State football got to that point, and they made that choice and made a midseason move when Trent Miles, I guess pending whatever we'll get to later in the program, hasn't happened yet with Del McGee, but it's definitely not a great time around Georgia State athletics where kind of the flagship programs are both floundering, and I think there was a lot of hope that you could at least kind of cobble it together, and I was certainly looking at it just kind of like trying to see the vision, and I certainly saw like the tools that some of these guys brought in, and you could work with that, but the issue is the pieces have changed now every successive offseason, and it looks the exact same. It doesn't seem like there's much being done to accentuate anyone's skill sets particularly well, and that's been the case through 4 different rosters now, and it's kind of hard to see anything but more of the same happening, except you hope that it doesn't bottom out like it is currently projected to do. Like, they went from 11 projected wins to 9 projected wins per Ken Palm, and a couple other places as well, like Torvik. That feels very alive. Worse than that feels alive. Right now, you just kind of hope they maybe find something to where it doesn't get that outright embarrassing. But as far as like bigger picture, this getting better to the point where like we aren't talking about coaching security, hot seat stuff at the end of the season. Right now, I can't see it. You know, it just is. That was such a bad introduction, and it's not going to get a lot easier in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even really have anything to add to that. So you're 100% correct. Unfortunately, I wish you weren't, but like that's where we're at with this team. You know, you get the benefit of the doubt when you earn it, and I had just looked up when you had said the 3 years because I was like, there's no way that's right. This is really year 4. It sure is. You know, if you're a senior, a 4-year senior at Georgia State right now, your entire collegiate career for men's basketball, I'm just sorry. I'm just sorry.
Yeah, I had to get that box score off the screen finally, just get it out of there. We have another basketball game to talk about. The women, I think I mentioned it earlier, started their season with a win. They were playing non-D1 Oglethorpe, so obviously a little bit of a different situation, but they win 108-59, take care of business. Kind of a theme we've seen with this team. They forced 33 turnovers, which is not just been something they've done against non-D1 teams. They've done it against conference opponents, so early impression there. Still doing that, getting after it defensively especially. You got Crystal Henderson expectedly leading the way. She has 24 points, 10 of 18, 2 of 3 from 3, 7 boards, 4 assists, only 2 turnovers. Certainly you liked what you saw from her, but you kind of knew she was going to be the focal point. You lose like Michaela Tolliver, Maya Williams, so you're going to be replacing some players. UCF transfer Morgan Robinson Wagwu, 13 points, 11 boards, 5 assists. Welcome to the team. Like, that's a great spot to come in. 2 freshmen as well, getting in the double digits. Savannah Robinson Holmes, 14 points. Grace Lanier, 13 points. And then Kaylee Addy, who was on last teams as well, contributor, 15 points. And so I don't really know what to make of, like, you can't take too much away from this, but certainly it's better to talk about a win after 20-plus minutes on whatever happened in Ypsilanti on Monday night. And it feels like, speaking to what we were just saying isn't happening with Jonas Hayes' teams on the men's side, even as this women's team has not really reached the pinnacle under Gene Hill, they've had more or less the same identity year to year. And there's been a lot of cohesiveness, and he's kept a lot of these players, and they've built on what they're hoping to build on what they did last year, making their way in deeper into the Sun Belt tournament. But even when the teams haven't been nearly as effective at winning games, it's still been, they've tried to do the same things. And some years more effectively than last year, probably as good as they've done since Gene Hill's been the coach in Atlanta. But you definitely can't take has a style, knows what they want to be for granted these days around Georgia State basketball. And Georgia State women's team certainly doing that. Get a win here. They go to Mississippi State on Friday, so they're also facing a stern test on the road against a power conference team. And then they go to Wofford on Tuesday. So certainly a different vibe where you're thinking with them, they beat Clemson a couple years ago, they beat Georgia last year. Maybe you pick off Klanga down in Starkville. But certainly you hope to win the Wofford game next Tuesday, and so you're looking at 2-1 as a realistic possibility for this team. Certainly headed to brighter heights, it feels like at this point, than the men's team is.
Yeah, I don't even feel nearly as fearful about their upcoming schedule, and I mean Auburn and Miami are on that, so that just really goes to show you where the women are right now. It's lovely that Crystal Henderson is back and clearly doing her thing. If you want to nitpick, the fouls are probably an issue. If you're dominating a team like Oglethorpe like this, probably shouldn't be racking up all those fouls, and you definitely shouldn't be fouling out. That's not great. But other than that, I mean, it's just so hard to nitpick the women at this point, just because there has been that consistency. There has been that, gradual improvement over the years. Maybe they haven't reached the heights that they would like to. Of course not. But I would much prefer, their version of basketball right now than the men's version of basketball. Simply because, I mean, they're just actually an entertaining product to watch. I mean, they've got good players. The players do seem to like playing there. They seem to they want to get better. They have been getting better. The transfer portal hasn't totally wrecked them over the years. And even though they've lost some important players in the portal as well, and just with graduations, they've still been able to kind of replace them as best as they can. And you can see it on the court that there's still that chemistry that this team has had over the last couple of years. So
I do have a follow-up. Just looking at this box. How did Oglethorpe play 18 players?
That
I didn't realize until I was looking at this. It was like this went so deep. I just had to count it out because I was like, "Hang on a sec," because I was like, "How deep did Gene go on the bench?" They played 11, and it's like this list is so much longer than Georgia State's, and you'd kind of think it'd be the other way where Georgia State would empty the bench and get a lot of looks at a lot of players. But Oglethorpe, the team manager's getting in there, going deep. Got a whole stack of walk-ons who saw some time. The 40 bench points is something I guess I'll be interested to monitor. Both those freshmen that I mentioned, I think, were in that category coming off the bench, and I believe most of their points came in the second half, so probably they got a lot more run, and so I'll be curious how much that production, obviously you're not going to bank on 40 bench points every game, like that'd be ridiculous, but curious to see how much they do rely on the bench. I mean, I know Gene's usually gone pretty deep and kind of rotating in, especially the way that they like to play defense, so a funny thing with noticing there's 18 players leading me on to a serious point about we'll see how this bench kind of progresses, but certainly as you're not really sure who's going to emerge next to Crystal Henderson. Right now, you're not sure there's a Michaela Tolliver you can pair with her. It might be the case that you're looking at, especially these freshmen who can maybe grow up very early on, get pressed into action and kind of find roles for themselves. And maybe it's you got Crystal and everyone else, but everyone else, it's a nice little grouping you got together where you've got people can balance out your one star that you're kind of leaning on more than everyone else. So that's certainly something to watch. And I do imagine that if we were talking about Georgia State having a win at Mississippi State this week, probably it will have come with another 20-plus performance from Crystal, and you maybe one of those game-winning shots, and just kind of the moment. You still feel like right now, because you don't know the rest of the team, she's who you'd probably expect to be making those big plays down the stretch. But I guess this is the out of conference for them is probably going to be about just kind of figuring out roles, but seems like they've got a pretty decent group and wanting to build on success that they put forward last season. We've obviously been such a row with post-game shows and everything, but it really feels like a long time since football's happened because it would be every 3 or 4 days, whatever, we put something out, and there's been a bit of a break on that. Obviously, if you didn't check it out last week when we were on by, had the chance to talk to Penny Hart, I'll put the link there. But great to get the interview series back up again. Talk to former Panther great. Great stuff from him, honestly, not just fluffing it up. As I was hearing him give these answers, I was like, that was great. I didn't know that. That was good stuff. I'm glad to have learned more about this guy, learn about the 2015 Panthers and what made them tick. So check that out if you have not already. Link will be on this video. But yeah, Georgia State 1-7. A lot of the same caliber stuff you could say about the basketball that we were just going through with the men's team. I mean, a little further down the line, but I think a lot more safely, you can say this is a lost season for Georgia State football. Went through some of the detailing of that on Panther Talk, kind of both the on-field and the off-field stuff. So we'll encourage you to check that out if you're looking for just kind of the autopsy of what went wrong with this team. They still have 4 games to play, and that will start this Saturday afternoonish, 4 p.m. kick at Coastal Carolina. They are 5-3 on the year, so they win and will make a bowl game for the 3rd straight year under Tim Beck, who is 19-15 with the Chanticleers. It's a 4-4 series, and as it's kind of the running joke of all running jokes on this podcast, neither team has lost this game as the road team. So Georgia State will have to not only buck the trend of this season, but keep history alive and win here on the road to keep that going. If Coastal wins, they'll make a bowl game, and they will be the first team to win in their own stadium in this series since it started being played in 2017. And so there's so much we could get into, and obviously I don't want to give short shrift to this game just because, like, I want our thing to be like we still talk about this stuff as if it matters as much as like if they were 7-1 versus 1-7. But like the first thing to touch with football, just kind of like what do they look like coming out of the bye? Like, is the buy-in factor still there? Have business decisions been made? I haven't heard anything about that, and like there's not a Darrell Bailey Jr.'s out on the availability report, but he did get hurt in this last game, so there's no clear, like, obvious, like, oh, this guy has decided that he wants to sit out the rest of the season, whatever. But before any of the X's and O's or anything with Coastal or anything with Georgia State, like, on the field, like, who lines up where does what, the care factor and how much they're still fighting for this coaching staff is certainly going to be the chief thing to watch, because all they got to play for is pride at this point. And that can be a helpful thing, and that could be the thing that leads to a team kind of limping down the stretch and going 1-11 into this spot. So we'll find out for the first time in the post-bowl world what this team has on Saturday night, Saturday afternoon, whatever you want to call it. Weird, 4 p.m. weird time.
Yeah, very weird time. I thought that was a typo because of the time change when I looked at that and updated
Like, just give us an extra half hour. Just start it at 3:30. Like I don't know what you're not saving the TV. You're not getting like the half. If you're gonna do that, do it at like 5 or 6.
Exactly.
I don't know what we're doing.
Can I even watch this game? Oh yes, it's not on ESPN.
It's on Plus. Yeah.
I had to throw a joke in there. You know I did. Actually, can I watch Cincinnati? I'll check that later. The one encouraging thing that I will say is when Georgia State came out of the bye last time, they played their best 60 minutes of defensive football all year. Against an offense that I think, well, Coastal's kind of humming right now. We'll talk about that in a second, but I don't think it's a hot take to say that James Madison is a better offense than Coastal.
I mean, they've put up 60 or almost 60 twice since playing Georgia State. And I mean, the most Georgia State showing up in like the discourse is people being like, how did James Madison only beat this team by 7? So congrats to Georgia State football. You're 1-7, but at least everyone is talking about you in the context of clowning another team who actually beat you still. So
exactly,
fun times.
Extremely fun times. But that to me is where this starts. And obviously Georgia State and Coastal have played some incredibly weird games over the years. This one kind of reminds me of that 2023 game where you look at it and it's like, okay, I don't understand how Georgia State is... No, not 2023. I think 2021. When Georgia State very much shouldn't have won. Yeah, that was the one. The 42-40 2021 game where Coastal was kind of still at those heights, coming off the good COVID year. And Georgia State went in there and, they just couldn't stop scoring. I don't know that we can foresee that for this one. Georgia State would definitely... Allowing 40 points, we would definitely expect from Georgia State's defense, unfortunately. But the whole, getting the offense back into gear and finding a way to continue to move the ball, that probably is going to be a little bit harder to come by. If you want to take some encouraging things, I think Cam Brown, he looked good against South Alabama. That was probably the best rushing game Georgia State has had all year. And they...
By numbers and by vibes.
Correct. They... Even if you take out Brown's 67 yards, like they definitely were able to move the ball on the ground effectively.
It was the first time they were like moving bodies in the trenches consistently. Yeah. There were a couple of drives there, and some of his script, like we went through on the post game show, like they just kept the offense on the field the entire third quarter and just forced South Alabama down. But I mean, in this situation where you're an underdog and you're on the road, like that could be a formula you try and emulate again. Like you get a 3-and-out on defense, start a quarter, and just like the offense goes on this slow drive, like that would work if you can find a way to do that again. And like the offense kept progressively looking better. It wasn't just that like last game was good. It's like week after week in October, and some of it was finally just giving the keys to Brown. Like the offense looked better, and so if they're ready to play, they're coming out there still fighting. It's kind of like you're curious to see what wrinkles they came up with over a long bye. Like that's something you can work with. You'd love to obviously not be 1-7 thinking about it, but it's like I am curious, and this is going to be probably one of the better defenses they played over the last month and a half, but I'm curious what they come out and do, anything else they throw in there. Maybe in a lost season, we actually see the DJ Riles double pass that they tried against Vandy, but like they actually get a pass. There's no tackling of the receiver to take away the possibility of some fun there.
You're exactly right. And the thing is while Coastal has a relatively good pass defense, their rushing defense is not great. And that'll be where Georgia State has the ability to, try some new things. I mean, I think part of what has been frustrating about this offense and kind of, as we have looked at the first 2 years of the Coach McGee era is they have not run the ball well. I know I just made a quip about last game being their best rushing attack, but they could have probably halved their production there, and it still would have been a true statement outside of some garbage time against Ole Miss. That's how bad Georgia State has been at running the ball this year. So if they spend 60 minutes of this game, Coastal does their thing on offense, and it's a relatively uncompetitive game, but Georgia State continues to improve, find some things. The offensive linemen finally gained some confidence late in the season. Moral victories are all they can play for at this point. So I think they can take that, but that wouldn't be a surprise to me. But also, if this is a game where they can put almost 200 yards on the ground, that's an avenue for Georgia State to kind of put some pressure on Coastal. I know they're on a 3-game winning streak. They're scoring a good bit, 44 plus points in each of the last 2 games against App and Marshall.
To App, beat up 44 against Marshall. There were a lot of turnovers in
a lot of turnovers. Yeah, and I think I caught that a little bit of that App State game, and because it was on the Saturday after Georgia State played South Alabama, and they had like 5 turnovers or something like that, like something ridiculous.
We'll monitor the situation because they could still make a bowl everything. They might lead to an App State crash out because it's not been going well for the Mountaineers since then, and there was a post game little like scrap where Coastal wanted to plant a flag on midfield. App did not like it. Players got into it, and I think they had players leave the team since then. They lost to ODU, and now they're in an anxiety bowl with the rival Georgia Southern, where both of them kind of needed to make a bowl game. It's like Coastal might have set App State on the wrong path this season. When I think a lot of people looked, especially after the first few games, where it's kind of like Tim Beck isn't going to last long here. Now you look at it, they're the last line of resistance to JMU winning the East. If they win out, they win the East. Because they've only got 1 loss in conference play. If they win their regular season finale against James Madison, they would have the tiebreaker there, and that'd be a 9-3 Coastal team that wins the East. So I mentioned the bowl is something they're playing for, but they've got loftier things still ahead of them, and so Georgia State's certainly going to go into this one knowing that this is a team that is really going to want this win. Kind of a trend here you maybe can get the next 2 weeks. Georgia State can be the a-hole. Stop Coastal from winning the East. Stop them from making a bowl this week. Game after this, Marshall comes to town at 4-4. They probably won't beat James Madison this week, but they could. But either way, they'd still need 2 more wins starting this week to make a bowl game. And so if they lose this game, JMU, that come to next week to Atlanta, lose that one, they'd be 4-6 and need to win out to make a bowl game. in this little stretch of time where Georgia State themselves don't have anything to play for, they can be nasty to the teams they're playing and spoil some parades. And so I don't think that's something you put in as like juice for this game from the players' perspective, but it's just Georgia State could come out of this not making any more fans in Conway or Huntington the next couple of weeks the way this plays out if they're able to find any success. And you talk about they need to find something in the run game. Obviously, I'm curious to see if Jordan Simmons just starts getting the carries now because it seemed like he was the most effective back. Get DJ Murray involved.
Can we just say that instead of Amos starting the game, we should just have Simmons start the game?
Yeah.
Like I think I don't even say this to be disrespectful. I feel like we've seen enough of Amos.
Well, it's not disrespect
at this point.
If you're fumbling as much as he is, you can't have that be your lead back.
Yeah, I mean, lost him the game versus
what
South
year
Alabama.
was it? Destin Coates had one fumble and just got benched to Armageddon. He didn't see the field again after like one or two fumbles under Sean Elliott. And Sean Elliott's like, I'm gonna give the guys I know that can trust that hold on to the ball, and Jam Williams and Tucker Gregg just didn't give back that running back rotation. So you might need to introduce a little bit of that. Also, the other factor in this, and this is something that we won't know if it's guys. Some of it will be guys forcing their way into the lineup. Some of it will be there's been injuries piling up. But you can now play everyone on the roster who hasn't played and not burn a red shirt. And so I am curious to see if there's true freshmen who haven't been playing as much, who we see more of. TJ Payton's obviously, his red shirt's gone because he's been playing kicks and he's been working in the running back rotation. I wonder if we see more of him as well because there's been spurts of it on offense. I think he might still have the longest run by a running back this season. So that's something. But curious how the usage is, especially with maybe some of the younger guys who haven't played. That certainly feels like the formula to getting guys playing. If you're worried about them coming in and competing, like if you're playing guys that are true freshmen trying to get out there for the first time, feels like a way that you could probably guarantee you're going to get the effort you're looking for, if not the performance. Because freshmen can be freshmen sometimes, but that's certainly something to keep an eye on. Certainly something that I'll be watching just to see, oh, that person's in now. That's interesting. And Leo Blackburn is still out, listed out on the availability this week. So those freshmen who have been playing, plus other guys have been redshirt or haven't played yet, but would no longer risk their redshirt, like Jamari Miller at receiver. We'll see what happens there if someone can emerge as kind of a third guy behind Ted Hurst and Robinson. On the Coastal side, Samari Collier has become the quarterback, and that kind of feels like that's solidified their offense in a really nice way. And he is a lot more of a runner. They're averaging 143 passing yards a game. It's not great. So the problem being Georgia State's not been great against the run, and they've struggled with running quarterbacks, even ones that aren't particularly mobile or athletic like Collier is. So it's got a little bit of column A where it's like you can probably focus on this more because there's not a team that's going to kill you through the air. But it still might not be enough because they've been really effective at it, and Georgia State's not been super effective stopping the run themselves. So, kind of just see where everyone's at type situation. Like, it feels like everything is in a lot more of a settled place than with basketball because it feels like we'll see what happens after the next 4 games, and we'll be able to kind of judge where the team is at, where the program is at. And that it's like the damage has been done, so to speak. So it's like there's not a lot more, like the crisis point is already passed, and maybe the bye weeks help with that, where it just kind of feels like oh, there's a football game, like almost it's like changed the energy a little bit. But
yeah, I mean,
it's not
like even. I would love to sit here and yes, these are athletes, so they'll have some pride about the senior day game, against Marshall next week, but Georgia State's not really gaining much by winning out here. A 5-7 year is not a good year for what their goals are. And because the way that the bowls work, I doubt that this would be a Georgia State team that was going to sneak in as a 5-7 bowl. That's just not going to happen.
I don't know what the APR is, but I mean, win one against an FBS team if you're talking through that scenario for sure.
Right. And they've already lost to their rival. They've already, lost the regular bowl eligibility. So, yeah, I mean, you saying that, oh, there's a football game, that really is the energy right now, and it's unfortunate.
The last thing for me, Coastal Carolina is a -3 turnover margin. They have committed 17 as an offense. Georgia State still has not forced a turnover since the Murray State game. Goodness gracious, is this a week where you've got to at least get one? Like, I don't know if it's going to turn the result or anything, but like, this has been a team through 8 games that has been coughing up more than twice a game. This is your opportunity. And like, they've been plays. Like, I think one got taken off the board against App State. There was a pick that got called back on a PI. Like, it hasn't been like they haven't been in those situations. They've had some dropped picks, but like, this feels like the week where, like, statistically it has to flip, or just maybe they're going to be stuck on 3 forced turnovers the entire season, which would obviously be a disaster. But this feels like a week where it's going to present itself. You got to make that moment count finally, and it could probably have a say in how this game plays out if you're able to force 1 or 2.
You hear a stat
House
like
money,
that, and it's it just doesn't compute. I mean, Murray State was the 3rd game of the season, something like that. Like, you're trying to tell me they have not forced a turnover in a month? Goodness,
going on 2 months at this point. If they make it through this game without forcing one, it will have been a full 2 calendar months plus between forcing turnovers for this defense.
Man,
it's a tough one, but like I say, that feels like one of the opportunities this week, if there is anything, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. The best thing about being 1-7 is expectations go out the window, and just kind of like, you're interested to see how they compete. And so, as we're trying to size up the feasibility of how long term this really could be, how much this coaching staff has this team, this is going to be the first glimpse of how they're going to look, how they can get this team up for games in a November where they don't have anything to play for. So, if you like football, it's still going to be between those white lines on a football field, not a green field, teal field. And they did a redesign. The end zones have been repainted.
Yeah,
black, which is good because the orange end zones they had was getting faded.
It's weird. Yeah,
they needed to do a little touch up there. Not that Georgia State knows anything about stadium touch ups that need to be done. We'll see how it goes. Saturday, 4 p.m. Starting off Georgia State's final month of the football season, along with a bevy of other games we'll get to right now. Dave is going to cover some picking to get us out the door. Yeah,
I mean, there are other conference games that are going on.
Should say. Obviously, we missed last week. We just kind of left it out.
Yeah.
As we're kind of still ramping up this whole thing, maybe year 3 of the pick'em will like really iron out how to do bye weeks. At times we're not going to record an episode just to make sure we get it out there, but we'll not go back and cover the week before. We missed a week. This happens. I saved myself from myself, though, by that happening, because I was I teased it a few pods back. Like, the one that I was going to pick no matter what was ULM beating ODU in Monroe, and I saved myself from that because ODU absolutely skunked the Warhawks. That upset did not happen. So
it's funny because I probably would have also said it based on how ODU had been playing. So
yeah, I mean, like, it made sense. The trip that gets everyone.
Yeah, it really made sense.
But obviously didn't happen, and so I'm saved. I've declared that for myself. I'm owning up, hand up. I would have done that and didn't, but so it doesn't count against the record. So it's a free, on the house, an upset that I was going to pick that I didn't have to, and so it doesn't count against me.
It certainly doesn't. So to just kind of bring everybody up to speed, here's where we're at. Brady's at 46 correct, 15 incorrect. I'm at 43 correct, 18 incorrect as we head down to the final stretch of the season. I'm going to start with the 2 that we differ, just because I think that makes the most sense. I am I picked against it, I think last year. I'm a believer in the road team wins in this series, unashamed as well. I think Georgia State, this is the type of ridiculous game that Georgia State absolutely wins, because we've seen it in this specific series before. For as bad as the juju is between the Panthers and the Mountaineers, the juju is the complete opposite for them versus the Chanticleers. So I know you have Coastal. I understand why. Like, that makes sense. You're welcome to expand on it, but like, I feel like sure. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
I used this shot last time with the South Alabama game. I was like, this feels like a spot they could get it, and it didn't happen. So I'm not just going to keep chasing it. Like, I could see it for sure. Like, it's 7.5 point spread. Like, right. I'm a bit surprised it's a pretty similar line to South Alabama, given I think Coastal's better and it's on the road. But I guess the questions have to be asked. If they win this game, does Georgia State need to play on a teal field at home? Is the teal field the magic there?
Might as well.
Well, a color field of some kind, because they also won on Boise and blew out in Boise. Do they need to consider any kind of non-traditional colored field, because I think that would be an all-time perfect record on non-traditionally colored fields if they continue that this Saturday with a win against Coastal Carolina. Many are thinking, many are saying.
Many are saying. The other one that I have is a strictly I just like the home team play. I think Louisiana is going to beat Texas State. And the biggest reason is because Texas State absolutely loses these types of games. And this is another year where Texas State has some energy. You know, they drop they have a loss that feels a little bit their Arizona State game. It felt like that game was not as close as the final score. They definitely had a chance in that one, and then they didn't end up pulling the win out. And then the wheels kind of fell off with some close losses, then some not close losses to various Sun Belt teams. I don't know how happy I would be if I was joining the new Pac-12 and receiving the Bobcats, but that is not for me to decide. They are, like Georgia State, winless in Sun Belt play.
Well, here you go. Got you the stat on Texas State that at least is something Georgia State fans can hold their hat on. Georgia State's second in this statistic, so they're not far off, but Texas State, I think this was from a couple weeks ago, so they can't fix it even more now. Guaranteed to be the losingest Sun Belt Conference team in football as they leave the conference. They will not make up the ground there. Been better recent years, but there was a lot of doldrums there before then when they joined the league. And so I forget what the exact record is, but it's like 2070 something all time as a conference team, and they'll be going away. Georgia State cannot stoop to their level this season, obviously. Not safe forever on that grounds if they don't turn it around, but a parting shot to the Bobcats there, even as I picked them to win this game. That
certainly
scoreboard, as it were. They keep losing these games. I just don't think they're going to go winless in conference. I don't think Louisiana's a world beater, so it's like I keep picking them and they keep losing. But I just think in one of these games, Brad Jackson's going to go crazy. Bo Sparks going to get 200 receiving yards, and they'll just hold on to a lead. As we've established, they're not great at protecting leads nor playing from behind, as we found out when they got just beaten down by JMU at home when they last played last Tuesday. But one of these games, it just won't matter, and they'll get it done. And so I see it happening here. I did pick, we both had App beating Southern. Kind of really can't suss out the vibes there, but I don't feel like anyone's that happy. And App's
horrendous.
Back to not knowing what the quarterback is, even as Georgia State made J.J. Cole look like an all-world quarterback, so not sure what you want to do with that one.
Just real quick, I think it's very possible. I don't think it 100% will happen, but it is very possible that the loser of this game, App State Georgia Southern, loses out and doesn't go to a bowl game. And that would be catastrophic for both of these
depends
teams.
on who you ask.
Well, true.
I think Georgia Southern fans at this point might not mind if something goes that. Like at this point, it's kind of that going 6-6 and making a random bowl game versus having the real conversation if things have gotten that bad. I don't know how many fans out there supporting the other in-state Sunbelt school are going to be that mad if they lose. Except this week, I just think the rivalry overcomes you, and it's like I feel all these things, but we can't lose to this team. So I think they'd end up being happy. They'd talk themselves into a win here, even if they aren't super happy with where Clay Helton is taking their program. But JMU, again, now I'm not doing the thing anymore. I pick them to lose. It's like until they do, they feel like they're in a pretty decent spot to win the Sun Belt. Maybe go 11-1, 12-1, make the playoff, though they still, I think, need some help there. I picked Southern Miss to beat Arkansas State, but maybe we should stop betting against the Red Wolves. They control their destiny in the Sun Belt West. If they win this game, they win out, they win the West. And we thought that was going to be the Southern Miss Troy situation in the final week of the season, but Arkansas State went to Troy this past Saturday, won on the field, wasn't particularly close. The Red Wolves have found something in the middle of the year. I think Southern Miss is still the best team in that side of the Sun Belt, so I'm not picking it, but I guess I'm trying to have it both ways here. Not going to have it on the scoreboard, but this will be an interesting game. This will be certainly could be the decider in that side of the league when all is said and done. But I'm picking Southern Miss to handle business here, keep it rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I think Arkansas State is a good pick. I don't want to say trendy. People use that too often. But
I mean, maybe you should if you're making up ground.
you're not wrong. It's annoying because everything is in front of them. And if they are to get past Southern Miss, I don't think it's crazy that they end up being 7-1 in Sun Belt play. You know, obviously they have the tiebreaker and, you know, go to the Sun Belt championship, but I don't know that we saw this from this Arkansas State team, especially after they dropped that game to UL Monroe about a month ago. So kudos to them for kind of finding something.
I mean, you did before the season because they were supposed to, like, Butch Jones had been here. I think him and Ronnie are like the longest tenured coaches in the league now. Like, kind of felt like you needed to see this type of step for them, but then when they're losing games early in the year and just didn't look like it was coming together, it's like, what is happening with Butch Jones? It's like the thing I put on Twitter was like the way that it switched from Butch Jones on the hot seat to Arkansas State controls their own destiny in the West with quickness. Impressive to see. It's a veteran team, and you got Jalen Raynor as an experienced quarterback, so you kind of hoped that this would be a year where you could put it all together, because anytime you've got your quarterback that's back for multiple years in this day and age, especially at this level of football, you got to take that to the bank. Seems like they're back on track to maybe doing that. We'll see how they manage. It's a home game. Believe this one and Marshall JMU are going toe-to-toe on national TV spots in the noon window on Saturday. I would imagine JMU's on ESPN2 and the other one's on U because JMU and it's a better game, a better team, name recognition, playoff spot, and all that. But even if being on U is not that great because the viewership numbers aren't super, nice spot for the Sun Belt and pivotal weeks of the season to get some noon spots. And if someone's looking for something interesting, if they're not Georgia fans looking to see them play Mississippi State, Sun Belt's going to have a display. If YouTube TV is back, and please God let this stupid dispute between greedy corporations end, some quad boxes will be doubling up on some Fun Belt, which is good for the conference.
I would love nothing more to stay home and watch football with my cat.
Begging, in fact.
Exactly.
This is
literally
what we want to do.
I want to give you my money so I can do this. I can't bring my cat to a bar. That would be irresponsible.
Though Chicago's probably at least got some cat-friendly bars. At least one.
There are several cat bars. I don't know that they have TVs for football, but there are several places where you can go hang out with a cat in one area and have a beverage.
Honestly, let's hope you don't find out and that this has been just figured out by the time Saturday happens so you don't have to. But if it doesn't, I guess let us know if you can corner that market on cat sports bars.
Certainly will do.
I guess we ended on a low because we brought up corporate blah. But it wasn't the low of Georgia State football and basketball being in kind of a weird spot. So it's the minor things, it's the little victories, I guess. If you've made it all the way in this podcast, obviously, appreciate you listening. This is this masochism at a certain point following this team. And whether you're talking about football or basketball right now, it's just been one of those stretches. And I can't promise you when it'll get better, but I can promise you that when it does, we'll be talking about it on Thursday Night Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode. We will catch you next time on the Thursday Night Podcast.